Welcome everybody. Welcome to the assembled in the public gallery. Thank you for coming this evening. We acknowledge and respect our complex history. We welcome everyone to build our future together. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed, recorded and published in accordance with the Council's live streaming and recording of public meetings policy. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of Council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. Item 2 on the agenda is elected members' declaration of interest. I ask whether there are any declarations of interest. Being none. Item 3 is public forum. I've approached the public and no one wishes to speak, so we'll move on. Item 4, petitions and deputations. I note a request which was declined. Item 5.
Mr. Mayor, sorry. Could I just ask for some clarification on the request that had been declined? That in consideration of some of the other deputations that have been made, I'm just wondering why that one was rejected. I know it's noted there that that the COVID vaccinations aren't in the line of council's requirements, but as we were always told, that local government is the closest to the community for interaction. And I just thought that that it may have been or would have been interesting to hear what was going to be put forward. And I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that it may have been in line with what was sent to us all from Port Hedland, and which I think we should be acknowledging from Port Hedland and thanking them for that information. And I'd put it on notice that down the track that maybe we look at that at a different meeting.
For Councillor Downwood, in regard to, I actually haven't investigated it. Mr. Smart, would you like to add anything? Or Councillor Crosling, would you like to add anything to, because I haven't investigated Section 11 of the Local Government Act.
Yeah, as it says, it was outside the scope of local government. I obviously had a conversation with Mr. Grundy, which everyone was privy to the email that went around. As I said, as elected members, we have received every piece of documentation and emails from Port Hedland and others. We have it all in front of us. If anyone here in the room wants to, they are full well, if they know the meeting procedures, they can bring up a motion without notice or motion with notice. There can be that discussion, but as it states, it is with outside council scope. And yeah, the conversation that Mr. Grundy and I had obviously was on email. So if there's anything else I can add to that.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Crosling. And in that regard, I am somewhat surprised that there hasn't been more commentary within the general media, given the amount of exposure that the letter from Port Hedland has had. But the answers to the questions would definitely lie at a much higher level within the federal and state government. But I'm happy to take questions. And your question on notice, Councillor Downwood, in regard to having that the letter acknowledged. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Downwood. Item 5, confirmation of council minutes. Would someone like to move that the council minute meeting of the 22nd of October is an accurate record? Councillor Dennis. Councillor Goodman. Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Item 6 is matters being laid on the table. There are none. I table item 7, my report, albeit I was only here for a very short period of time, a week before I took leave. Would someone like to second my report? Councillor Turner, all those in favour? Carried. Happy to take questions at any time on that report. Item 8, elected members report. Comprehensive report from Councillor Crosling. And Councillor Crosling, thank you for standing in during my absence. And I have spoken with Councillor Crosling, and I do know that she very much enjoyed her citizenship ceremony. It's one of the most wonderful things you can do as an elected member. So thank you, Monique, for that. Have you got anything to add?
Not really. I just wanted to mention that it has been a busy few weeks while the Mayor has been away, but the Libraries Board I just wanted to touch on. That was a really interesting experience. I've never had contact with the Libraries Board, but they were very, I think they thought our library was wonderful. What we have there at our library is wonderful, our staff, our programs, and they were really impressed with what they saw. I just wanted to also touch on, I went over to the Lucendale Area School to obviously open the art exhibition, and they just did an absolutely fabulous job. It was only open for one evening, but the stuff that was there, from woodwork to metalwork to paintings, everything in between, was just fantastic. And as I mentioned in the report, all the food that was supplied on the night was actually grown at the school, paddock to plate, so there was nothing brought in, so it was just a wonderful evening. And as I said, there's lots of other things. The Remembrance Day service was lovely. Congratulations to our staff again for putting on great Remembrance Day services that were well attended. And just lots of exciting things have just been happening around the area. I suppose everyone is quite aware that we have a lot of new businesses popping up around the area, which is fantastic. And the Limestone Coast Local Co opened on Saturday, which is awesome for our shopping district, awesome for tourists, and yeah, obviously we have the new bakery opening soon, and the other thing is there's been lots of school celebrations, and there'll be more of those, which I'm sure the Mayor will attend over the next few weeks. Lots of Year 12 and award nights. So yeah, and just to say that the Christmas pageant is on next Friday night here in Naracoorte at the PNRE at the showgrounds, and obviously the Lucendale one is on the Friday the 13th of December, and the carols in the squares on the 15th. So lots more happening in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Crosling. Councillor Goodman has tabled a report. Are there any questions of Councillor Goodman?
I would just like to add two things.
Councillor Goodman.
I attended the Stand Like Stone 20-year celebration lunch in Mount Gambier on the 8th of November, and Ian Bird, who is the CEO of the Community Foundation Australia, spoke, and I know we receive requests for contributions towards Stand Like Stone in the chamber, which we have declined, and I understand and respect that decision. But it's very interesting hearing from him describing things like Stand Like Stone as social infrastructure that our region is really lucky to have, and lots of other regions around Australia are currently trying to set up. And whilst I'm not advocating for cash contributions, I think that it would be worth council considering how we can assist organisations like Stand Like Stone in a in-kind or facilitatory role. The other thing I'd like to bring attention to was the Jason Doig Memorial Cricket match that was held at Lucendale on the 17th of November, a year since tragic passing of Jason Doig, and a really lovely community commemoration of service of Jason Doig, but our police force more broadly.
Thank you, Councillor Guzman. Item 9, Chief Executive's report. Mr. Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First report largely deals with our council committee membership and appointments, given that it's 2 years since your term commenced. A fair bit of commentary in there, which I won't go through. It was there for reading, and similar process to November 2022. I suggest we can go through the recommendations at the end of my report, unless there's any significant questions or thoughts of change to our terms of reference rather than the membership. You'll note in most of the recommendations I've put for the remainder of the term of this council, and as I've provided in the report, that's predicated on the possibility that the term may be extended. At the LGA AGM on Friday, there was a motion put by one of the Metro councils because of the conflict between state and local government elections that the LGA seek discussions with the state government on possible shifting of our terms. So we'll wait and see what the state government considers on that matter, and will be advised in due course. So other items, just a update on the asbestos contamination. As most people would be aware, that chatter's out and about in the community. I've just reported from a particular, specifically council perspective, not entering into any debate what is right, wrong or otherwise, but purely what is the potential impact on council at this point. It is nil. The NRLE sheep EID, we have a further meeting with the CEO of PIRSA on Thursday. We remain hopeful. We'll see what becomes of that. Depending on what happens Thursday, I've had discussions with the Mayor today about potentially escalating that up through the political circles, but we're hopeful that we may get a better hearing on Thursday. Lucindale Health Centre is really there for information, given that I've only got a few months to go, whether that is resolved or not, so it's there for information. Been having ongoing discussions with the Mayor on this. Addition to that is hopefully when we receive a proposal from the Trust about the cost share of some internal doors, Council may also consider the taking back of the lease of that rather than to the Trust. I think the Trust will consider that. It has caused some difficulties in subleasing and different arrangements, and it may be a consideration to come back to Council, but that is for future consideration. So if you're happy to, we can work through the membership of the various committees. So recommendation 1 is the membership of the...
If I may.
Sorry.
Councillor Dennis.
To a section. Just in regard to the asbestos contamination, extensive report, just in relation to the EPA, if we do have members of our community that are concerned about asbestos contaminated rubble on their property, would we be able to give an explanation to the community of how they would how the EPA works or how it's involved? I'm sure there's people out there that have concerns. Are they a policeman, or how does the EPA work in relation to private contamination?
Look, I don't profess to be an expert on how they work.
Yep.
And at different times we disagree with the EPA in various matters that do affect us. Ideally, they should make direct contact with EPA if there are any community people or community organisations that have any concerns with possible contamination. The EPA can then undertake some initial determinations, advice on any testing that can be undertaken and by whom. It then establishes some facts for them all to go on and whether they need to get involved in a further investigation. So I would suggest first point of contact is the EPA as a regulator, as the agency that has the means for testing and the knowledge which we just don't.
You're happy with the response, Councillor Dennis? Thank you. Mr. Smart?
So the first recommendation is on the Audit and Risk Committee. As I alluded to in my report, 2 had confirmed. I had discussions with the 3rd member on Wednesday at our Audit and Risk Committee. So all 3 have confirmed that they're happy to continue on with their membership, subject to council approval. So we're seeking 2 elected members and the presiding member being appointed by council tonight as well. So I guess looking for volunteers or a motion.
I'm in your hands. Councillor Turner?
I'm currently on that committee and I'm happy to remain on it.
Councillor Crosling?
I was just going to nominate Councillor Ross if he's happy to continue on.
Yep, I'm happy to continue.
Councillor Ross, thank you. Any further nominations? Councillor Ireland?
Obviously, no councillor Turner's just spoken, he needs to be nominated for the position, I believe.
Would seek nomination, then it just goes through as a motion.
Yep, okay.
That's the informal nomination.
So yes, Councillor Ireland.
Well, thank you, Mayor Ross. I'm happy for that motion to be as read, please, with Councillor Turner and Councillor Ross as elected members for that term, and as reading, and with presiding member being Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland.
Thank you.
Moved. Councillor Ireland. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Dennis. Any further discussion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Second recommendation is for the membership of the CEO Recruitment Performance Review and Remuneration Committee. I've suggested, given that that committee is now in the midst of recruiting new CEO, that would stay as is unless there's any other observations.
Someone like to move to that effect? Councillor Ross, Councillor Grundy. Discussion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Remember, sorry, yeah, on this one up top.
Missed one, did we?
Yeah, I think I did. I was just looking down. So the Strategic Asset and Planning, the SAP committee. Thanks, Shana. So that's all of councils. We don't have to decide on membership unless you want to change the terms of reference.
Yep.
But we do need to elect the presiding member. So currently, Councillor Ross.
Presiding member for the Strategic Asset and Planning Committee, Councillor Ross.
I'd like to move Councillor Crosling as the presiding member.
Councillor Crosling. Prepared to accept. Thank you, Councillor Crosling. Seconder, Councillor Turner. Any other nominations? All those in favour of the recommendation? Thank you very much. Congratulations, Councillor Crosling.
And the final recommendations on the NRLE board, both independent members have indicated they're willing to.
Sorry, I do have a conflict of interest when it comes to this, so I better make myself vacant.
Do you feel the need to, Councillor Dennis?
Say that.
Yes.
I'll nominate you.
So currently, that membership, is up for again.
Queensland Livestock Exchange.
Nominate Councillor Grundy.
Councillor Grundy.
I'll nominate Councillor Ireland and Downwood, please.
Councillor Ireland and Downwood. Any further nominations? Councillor Ross.
Yeah, presiding member, Councillor Grundy.
And thank you, Councillor Ross. And thank you for standing. That was good. Any further discussion? We have a mover and a seconder, I believe. No, we don't have a mover. Would someone like to move to that effect? Councillor Ross, Councillor Ireland, Councillor Ireland, yes. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, yes, thank you. Good. 9.2.
Deputy Mayor appointment. Again, I'm not going to read through the whole report. Same process as 2 years ago. But just to be clear that we worked through a number of recommendations for a reason, just to be sure of the term, the process to select the Deputy Mayor, and then followed by that process with a motion to confirm the appointment of whoever is selected. So unless you have any questions, I can work straight through the recommendations.
So before you go on, Mr. Smart, I'd just like to reiterate my comments of earlier this evening. Councillor Crosling has been my Deputy Mayor for the last 2 years, and she has stood in for me many times, in fact, although my wife would suggest that a deputy mayor should stand in way more. and I think I may take her up on that notion. But Monique has done a fantastic job, and she goes to many events within our community and is happy to report on them, and is the happy, smiling face of our council. Not everyone, not all elected members, Monique, have the opportunity to be able to go and to all of these functions and events, and so it's appreciated not only by me but also the rest of council. So thank you very much, Mr. Smart.
Okay, so the first recommendation is that council determines that we will have a deputy mayor. So that's your first decision you have to make, and what that term would be. And I'm suggesting it be for the same as the committee membership, will be for the remainder of this council's term, whether that be for 2 or 3 years, to be determined by the state government.
Councillor Maguire.
I'm happy to move that the term is for 2 years and that. Sorry?
For the remainder of the term.
The remainder of the term.
Thank
Sorry, I wasn't listening. The remainder of the term, and can I also move that it is conducted by a show of hands?
Can we do that in a separate motion?
That's a separate motion. A seconder for Councillor Maguire's motion that we have a deputy mayor. Councillor Goodman.
I'll speak to the motion. I just wanted to remind the community, and I don't know whether everyone's forgotten, but we did vote to have the deputy mayor term for 4 years. And then after the deputy mayor was elected, it was overturned by another motion that resulted in us having to have this vote at the moment. It is my belief that we sat here as a group of people and decided that we're going to have a deputy mayor for 4 years, and we have overturned an active motion of council, and this is the result. I just wanted to voice that opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. And just for reference, many councils have 1-year terms of, so there are many things that go on, but take your point.
Speak to that again. Agreed, but we did vote for a 4-year term, all of us.
Absolutely.
And then when the candidate that was successful was not desired by the majority of council, they then moved another motion to shorten the term to 2 years.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Point taken. Councillor Turner.
Just, I agree with that sentiment. If that had been the case and remained for 4 years, we'd still be voting again in the 5th year, if the assumption that we're going for 5-year term rather than 4 anyway, so it would have come up eventually.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder. I put the motion that we have a deputy mayor for the remainder of the council's term. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Smart.
Second recommendation is about the process. So the method suggesting my recommendation is choosing a deputy mayor by an election process, and the method of election be by show of hands or secret ballot. So that decision has to be made within the motion. First past the post method, if there's an equal number, the drawing out of a hat, and that one is excluded. And then the mayor declaring the result, and then a preceding resolution to reflect that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Councillor Maguire.
I'd like to move that it is conducted by a show of hands, and if I may speak to that, just with the controversy with what Councillor Dennis has just stated, and the amount of emphasis that this council has put on transparency, I think it's important that the community sees how this is conducted and who votes for who, if there is a second.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ross, seconder. Further discussion and debate? Being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried.
So now it's stage of calling for nominations, and you can self-nominate. It doesn't have to be a mover or a second. It's just purely nominations either by others or by self.
Nominations for Deputy Mayor, please.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councillor Goodman.
Thank you, Councillor Downwood. Councillor Goodman, are you prepared to stand? Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Other nominations? Councillor Ross.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Crosling.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Crosling. Thank you, Councillor Crosling. Any further nominations? But anyway, and so these are purely nominations, so it's not a recommendation. In that particular case, I will put to the vote in order of nomination. In the first case, it was Councillor Goodman. All those in favour of Councillor Goodman, please raise your hand. 6. That's 6. 6-4. Those against. They're the 4. I'm assuming 4. 6-4. Councillor Goodman is duly elected from that show of hands. Councillor
Just for the community's benefit, can I call a division on that, or because it wasn't
It's
a motion?
available on the public record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Otherwise, if you'd done it the other way, you could have called for a division to help. Councillor Goodman, I ask someone to move that Councillor Goodman be appointed as Deputy Mayor. Councillor Downward, a seconder please. Councillor Rayner. Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Goodman, as duly elected Deputy Mayor. I look forward to working with you. 9.3, housing strategy.
Thank you. So, as per my report, again, I'm not going to read right through that, as a draft housing strategy for your consideration. Unlike some councils, and as we've discussed over time, we don't have land available for residential development at this point in time. That may change in the future. So the strategy is largely predicated on us relying on either partnerships or however means encouraging private sector to either subdivide or provide housing. So that is generally the outline of the paper. It also goes into what council's role can be with all that. So asset owner, again, currently not an option unless we decide to purchase land in the future. Facilitator, so we can bring various parties together, landowners, developer, state government, etc., to either secure or encourage development. Council can choose to be a partner in various ways if it so chooses at that point in time. An important fact, we are the regulator, so we are the development regulator, so we actually decide on the approvals for housing, land divisions, etc., but we also play an important role in a advisor on the way. So we always encourage those who are seeking to enter our planning system to come and have discussions at the council. We try to, I guess, help navigate the way through that in the easiest possible way. And of course we can advocate through a number of means, whether it be funding or barriers that are in the way, whether it be SA Water, SAPN, Native Veg, etc., to try to assist private sector people through that process. The strategy is written hopefully with a focus on a third-party perspective reading it, and that's probably mainly landowners, developers, and it shows where the opportunities are, apart from large amounts of urban infill, particularly in Narracoorte. And I guess just outlining what we already do. So the strategy would form council's broad opinion on what we can't do and where that could happen. But as we do on a day-to-day basis from a council administration, we have discussions with Office for Regional Housing as far as what the state is doing and how we can try to help try to secure funding. Unity Housing, they're the social and affordable housing provider in place of Housing Trust. So they have about 105 properties around our district. Private sector, so we already have ongoing discussions with those wishing to subdivide and other developments on land, and works accommodation during the old TAFE site, the old K's planning approval, and currently Tees Australia considerations, what they may wish to do. So happy to take any questions, but my recommendation is that we endorse that housing strategy.
Any questions? Councillor Maguire.
Mayor, I have a couple of statements, if that's okay, both very different, but if I could start with
Surprise
one.
me, Councillor Maguire.
Well, I found the report very good, it was fair. My concerns are the residential development for Narracoorte in particular. Whether we went north, south, there seems to be, and if we look at the local developer who was trying to develop 35 blocks on Old Coves Road and has run into a hurdle with native veg, I think, for approximately 9 stringy bark trees. And we're talking, he was told that if he replanted the trees, he could remove the trees when they actually grew to the same height. So we're talking years away from development. This is just coming from the person involved. Whether we went north or south, I actually think we're going to run into problems with native veg wherever we go, and that is a concern. So a couple of questions as a council, and I know Paul McCrosty's been working with this local developer, and the local developer has had nothing but high praise for Mr. McCrosty, but they just keep running into dead ends. So as a council, how can we go above this process and this? It is ridiculous. It is holding up residential land, and we're basically going to be boxed in. We're not going to have any room to move on the ridge because there is potential trees. That's my first part. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that or speak.
Well, perhaps if you gave them the opportunity. Mr. Smart.
I guess that's part of our advocacy role, which Mr. McCrosty's been fairly active, particularly with that particular development. So we have had discussions on that with the Office for Regional Housing, and with permission of the developer, we'll be writing to Minister Champion, who's got the housing portfolio, rather than the Minister responsible for native veg. In reality, the Native Veg Council is a statutory authority, and the decisions they make, a minister can't override. So it's a difficult place, and we've had discussions on the effect on our road making as well, which is a very similar process, frustrating. We also have to be careful that we're supportive in the right places for that. So as far as preserving native veg when we think it should be, but where it's practical to not, we should hopefully seek better outcomes. But we are somewhat limited, but we will advocate to the state government for potential changes in that space.
And I think further to add, Councillor Maguire, it's affecting councils statewide, and it's problematic.
Thank you. My second part is, as an elected member's role, we are here to look at the future of the district beyond our term as elected members. The township of Narracoorte is growing. Reading this report, we are tied down because we actually don't own the assets. So personally, I see the south side of Narracoorte running from Cedar Avenue and Memorial Drive extension, and the land currently being explored that I just spoke of on the Old Coves Road as probably the last frontier for residential expansion. If we look at it, its utilities are already there. There is water and power. It's already zoned residential, and it's sand, so good to build in. My concern, and where I'm leading to with this, is Hollywood Springs and beyond are 1 hectare or 2.5 acre blocks. And as a council, my personal opinion, I don't think we can afford to let this happen to this area on the other side of the road, on the left-hand side. But the problem we have is we have no control if that's what a developer or landowner wants to do, as in develop it into 1 acre blocks. The only way we can secure this land for residential expansion for Narracoorte, correct me if I'm wrong, for the next 50 to 100 years would be for council to look at purchasing that land itself. I'm not to say the developer wouldn't turn it into town blocks, but there is a chance they may not. And it is easier to develop 2.5 acre allotments. The landowner may not want to sell, so there is a lot of ifs and buts, but it's an opportunity to plan for our town's expansion. And I just wanted to put that out there to elected members to actually consider that as a possibility.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire, and I'm sure at future SAP meetings it will be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Mr Smart.
So I'll defer to Mr McCrosty to correct me as I go as well. I think there's could be two options. So obviously one is purchase of land wherever that parcel may be for future consideration by council. The other is the Limestone Coast Regional Plan, Land Use Plan. So we've had some initial discussions with Plan SA about appropriate zoning, particularly in that area and other growth areas of council. My understanding is that is zoned as neighbourhood rather than rural living. Then there are better controls to push that to that type of living. But I'll defer to the planner.
Mr McCroskey.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. The CEO is correct. The zoning is currently the neighbourhood zone, the former residential. It does pose itself to attractive residential allotments. However, we don't have any control if the developer comes in and chooses to develop into your 1 hectare allotments. If it meets the requirements of the Planning and Design Code, then essentially we have to stamp it. We've got no real grounds to hold it back. We can encourage and try to make the developer move in that direction, but if the developer chooses to develop into 1 hectare allotments, then unfortunately that's the way we have to head.
Thank you, Mr McCroskey. Any questions around that, or do I have any questions around the housing strategy?
I would like to move that the draft. I'd like to move that the draft housing strategy is noted and that a workshop be held to provide opportunity for elected member input and to develop the directions and priority actions for the strategy. And I'd like to speak to that. Now? Yep. I appreciate the work that's gone into the development of this draft strategy, and I note that it is part of the strategic plan that Council endorsed at the start of this term, and so it's important that we move ahead on that and start providing direction for housing in our district. I think to date this has been developed without any elected member input, and I think it's important that there is opportunity provided for elected members to provide feedback and comment on the content of this strategy. And also, currently there's really good guidelines and principles laid out in this document, and I understand that it is deliberately broad. However, I think in order for it to be helpful and provide more guidance and direction for council and for our community, it would be helpful to have specific directions and prioritised actions included in the document, and that's why I'd like to...
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. If you could just be so kind as to help finish your words.
Sure. That the draft housing strategy is noted and that a workshop be held to provide opportunity for elected member input and to develop the directions and priority actions for the strategy.
Move, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Maguire.
Second that, Mayor, and speak to it.
Councillor Maguire.
I agree, Councillor Goodman, with everything you've said. The only thing I'd ask is, would you mind changing that workshop to a SAP meeting? I just think it's so important that that this is transparent with the community and it needs to be live streamed. I think the media need to have access to listen to all elected members' opinions, because there is going to be a lot of different opinions regarding the North Parklands and the South. So I would just ask that you change that wording to a SAP meeting so it can be live streamed.
I understand the call for transparency around that decision. I think that this would come to a SAP after the workshop. The reason that I would like it to be a workshop is that inevitably providing comment and feedback can, take more time and more discussion than I think would be available at a SAP meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor Grundy.
Well, thank you, Mayor Ross. I'm happy to second it the way it is. I think Councillor Maguire has certainly alluded to a lot that needs unpacking. And, for instance, the North Parklands, there's plenty of areas up there, for instance, which do not have native veg, i.e. the pines. So there's a lot to talk about. And not that I've got any problems necessarily with the document that we've got in front of us tonight. The other thing is Mr Smart's assertion that the Minister can't override the statutory body. I tend to, with the greatest of respect, question that, in that I've witnessed myself plenty of ministers' discretion, and at the very least the Native Vegetation Act is an act of Parliament, and so the minister does have a degree of discretion, and at the very least the government of the day does.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. Any further discussion? Councillor Turner?
I'd like to support the motion as well. And adding to that, the reason around a sense of urgency on a workshop is that we've been notified by Mr Passon that the alternative government, if they were elected next year, is putting as one of their policies an enormous amount of funds into projects for housing for regional, and it would be it'd be important for us to be closer to be shovel ready than idea friendly. So I think a workshop is a very good suggestion, and also agree with Councillor Goodman's sentiment that I think this workshop should be reasonably tight around what the strategy document is. It's not about whether we do or don't develop north, south, east and west. It's let's just have a workshop to get this document that we're comfortable with as a policy statement, something we can advocate for, something we can use as power to talk to ministers or someone else for change. And then we have an open forum and talk about, on a SAT meeting, and talk transparently about development once that document's agreed. Otherwise it's just going to be, it's too much and nothing will happen. So
Thank you.
I think the workshop idea just around that is prudent, and we've already agreed to have a SAP on other building.
Councillor Crossley?
I just wanted to say that the housing strategy was really great to read through. I had a look at a few others from other councils, and I think what we've got in front of us is a really good starting document. Happy to have a workshop. But I also just wanted to let Councillor Grundy know that I have, in fact, seen letters from the Minister, Susan Close, who is the Minister for Environment and Water, and she will not and cannot override the Native Veg Council, even though she is the Minister in charge. It sounds ridiculous, but she does not have any jurisdiction to overturn the Native Veg Council and any of their recommendations, any of their power. She has no jurisdiction over whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. Is there any further discussion before I put the...
Seconder.
You've done that.
You've had your go. It's only the mover. Any further discussion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Up to Mr Smart. Major projects. Mr Willsmore.
Thank you. Just wanted to bring a couple of things to members' attention. So Narracrook Creek weirs, unfortunately the supplier has declined to provide an updated price for these works, so that supplier had worked with our designer to achieve Landscapes SA approval, so that caused some frustration. So we've now gone out for a request for quote, which closes shortly, for alternate suppliers.
If I may, just before we leave that subject, Mr Willsmore, does that put in jeopardy, knowing the build time for weirs, does that put in jeopardy the notion that this project may not be completed in the financial year?
Yes, I was just going to say that puts at risk delivering this project. So there is about a 12-week lead time on these units, so fairly frustrating and quite surprising when they said they pulled out. So that wasn't good news to hear. So once the quotes have come back through, we've assessed them and get an indication on lead times. We'll provide further advice back to the members. And then also just wanted to acknowledge the Narracrook South Primary School. So through the community engagement team, we did some consultation about the Leicester Park playground renewal. So we've had over 100 students provide a range of different designs and ideas for the playground. So that's a good support we had through that school. So we're working with them, currently developing some concept plans to take back to them and bring back to members for their review. We just wanted to acknowledge the school's support with that program.
Happy to take questions. Councillor Goodman.
Not a question, but a comment. It was really lovely to see the swimming lake open and being used by the school swimming program this week, and in particular hearing the students and the parents commenting on the repainting of the surface in some areas. It looks really bright and fresh and spectacular. So thank you and well done.
Councillor Crosland.
Pretty much going to reiterate what Councillor Goodman said. I've had a lot of comments about the upgrades that are being done around the swimming lake, and especially the repainting of the lines. It makes it heaps easier to be swimming in the mornings. The lines were getting a bit hard to see there early in the morning. So just a lot of positive feedback from the community of how fantastic the swimming lake is looking.
Thank you, Councillor Crosland. Mr Willsmore.
Thank you. Just in terms of the swimming lake lines, we will be putting the lanes back in. They've been left out this week at the request of the student swimming program. So once that program finishes this week, the lanes will go in to assist with that exercise that a lot of people in the community use.
Any further questions of Mr Willsmore? None. Item 11. Ms Edmonds.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Nothing further to add to the standard monthly finance report. Happy to take questions.
Can I reiterate that Mrs Edmonds is available for commentary around finance when she's in the office, which is every day nearly. Are there any questions of Ms Edmonds?
Again, a comment. I did take up the offer of meeting with Ms Edmonds to talk through the finance report, and I can recommend her to anybody who has questions. She's very thorough and explains it in a way that's very understandable.
We'll take that as an accolade.
Yes.
Budget review, item 11.2.
Thank you. Yes, so this is our first budget review for the financial year, other than the carryovers we dealt with in July. So hopefully the report has enough information for you. Basically, the biggest change is due to the introduction of the depreciation that we had calculated through the Talus consultant process, the road reval process. So we're now looking at, in terms of forecast for 2025, a slight operating deficit of 258,000 early days. So that will likely change by our next budget review as well. Happy to take any questions if you have any.
There being no questions, I ask for someone to move that the budget review to the year ending 30 June 25 as at 31 October 24 is endorsed. Councillor Maguire, Councillor Crosling. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. 11.3.
Thank
Mrs.
you,
Edmonds.
Mayor Ross. So this is our report regarding the certification of our financial statements, which is an annual process. In terms of the report, again, hopefully it's provided you with the information that you need. I've done a comparative here with financial statements against our final budget review for 23-24. So you can see here there was the relatively significant decrease in income, which is mainly due to that delay in receiving our financial assistance grant. That's a date in time, pre-June versus post-June transaction.
Near 2 days, Mrs. Edmonds.
Absolutely, yes, the Friday versus the Monday happened to turn over to July. Also, in terms of expenditure, just those categories that I've summarised there for you were the most significant. That had everything to do with the likes of capturing the new assets of the 22-23 year with the depreciation change in that 23-24 year. Employee costs down slightly due to the slight increase in engagement and usage of contractors, which you'll see on the next line, as well as a couple of vacancies. And the materials and contracts and other expense increase due to increasing contractors, as well as the general increase across the board of materials and the likes. Other information down there for you. I could keep reading, but I hopefully don't need to. Happy to take any questions if you've got any.
Any questions, please? Being none, thank you, Mrs. Edmonds. I ask someone to move that the draft financial statements pertaining to the operations of the Naracoorte-Lishindale Council for the financial year ending 30 June 24 are received and noted. Councillor Ross. Councillor Goodman. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. I'd ask someone to move that the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Trevor Smart, is authorised to sign the Council's certificate of auditor independence, acknowledging the following statements. Someone like to move? Councillor Ross, Councillor Turner, seconded. Thank you, Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. 11.4. Mrs. Edmonds.
Again, thanks.
I know.
So yes, here we have proposed 25 to 35 long-term financial plan and asset management plans. Just from the report, points to note, the assumptions have changed slightly this time round. We've gone with a slightly higher proposed rate revenue increase of 5% for the first 2 years and 4% for the remaining 8 of the 10-year plan. We have looked at using a CPI increase or thereabouts for our expenses. So we're looking at that slight margin of revenue over expenses. As per previous plans, we're considering modest growth factor, priority given to the renewal and maintenance of existing assets, capturing the need for grant opportunities with new assets. As you're all aware, the long-term financial plan incorporates all of our master plans, conceptual costings, so a lot of those will come down to the process of readdressing those projects should they go ahead in the years that they've been worked into the forecast for. Just the resulting factors of this plan is there is an operating deficit that will occur in the first 3 years should we stick to the plan. We'll look to break even in the 4th year, and a surplus is anticipated in operating revenue for the remaining term. It also indicates that Council will continue to have a negative cash balance throughout the life of the long-term financial plan. Expenditure on renewal of assets is 85.17 million, and a forecast of 33.71 is expected to be on new and upgraded assets, with 13.84 on capital income to offset the expenditure. Just the other points to note, the long-term financial plan doesn't take into consideration any in-kind or financial contribution from external parties. The projects reliant on the grant funding have been identified, assuming the 50% contribution, and all currently endorsed master plans have been incorporated into the long-term financial plan based on conceptual costings. So happy to take any feedback, any questions, follow up afterwards.
Councillor Ross.
Thank the staff for the report and the time you put into that. What this highlights here is, okay, it's a long-term financial plan. It's like a cash flow. It's a work in progress. You know, you continually evolve over the next year or so as we continue to look at it. But one thing that I thought was quite pertinent in there, which is was touched on, was the deficit that's going to be potentially for the next 3 years. What was concerning me, and it's concerned a number of people, was the way the flippant aperture, sort of the way that we went with our last rate review, and that was the decision to go for a 5% rate increase was justified by having some people talking to people within the community and thought it was a good number, and that was how it was justified. But the data and the information and the experience that was put into putting the reports together highlighted that there were some concerns that were coming up, and that was the depreciation. Now, and with the road reviews. So, and that was based on the experience of what was happening throughout the regions. So what we're seeing is that it was potentially, or not potentially, it has, is we've got $1.4 million worth of increase in depreciation. So, if you look at how does that equate, well, a 1% rate rise is equivalent around the $220,000 to $240,000 spend. So there's 6 rate rises pretty well there, so 6%. So what I implore is that going forward is that the council, that the elected members actually listen to what some of the wisdom that is provided and the experience that's provided to us in regards to how they see things potentially going, and we actually start listening to them, because okay, we can still make that work, but we've just got to start listening and actually using our head rather than using just popular politics in how we're coming up with some of these decisions. So that's my view, but I think it's something we just need to be quite focused on going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Look, I've had a couple of looks at these numbers because I'm on the Audit and Risk Committee, and so I had a look earlier. And I was really starting to question why we're going to such a deep deficit so early. And I asked the question at the Audit and Risk, and I was looking around the town rejuvenation plan, and I was pointed out that a lot of that cost actually comes under roads or road and stormwater infrastructure. So I had a look at this. Now, if you look at the plan over the 10 years, for some reason we're spending, I looked at it, $21 million next year on renewal of replacement, and yet we're spending an average of $7.1 million per year for the next 9 years. So alarm bells start to ring. So then I've corresponded with Alex, and I've talked with the Mayor, and I've drilled down to the fact that next financial year, and this is probably due in part that we haven't actually paid attention to this, there's a large cost from the town rejuvenation plan that were originated from the original plan, which goes previous to this council. And as we've dealt with them, we've just moved those costs into the following year. And as it turns out, next year we've moved 12.6 million of town rejuvenation under road construction into next year's budget. Now, some of these costs, I think, need to be revised, and they probably have been revised. I think Mr Wilsmore's done some investigations, but, you know, just to highlight what is in the financial report, we're still currently showing in this plan we're going to be spending next year 5.1 million on the roundabout in Ormerod Street, which was due to the one-way construction that's been changed. We were due to spend in big numbers 3.6 million on Jones Street and 2.5 million on Riverside Drive and 723,000 on formalising long-term parking. 12.63 million. Halfway through the plan, we're going to spend another 9 million on that town rejuvenation plan if we want to upgrade where the old tower is near the creek, you know, to create some wetlands and parklands, and that would be that would naturally attract some grant funding. But you're talking about, you know, $24 million over the 10-year plan on a $250 million you know, spend, and that's, you know, Councillor Ross is talking about, you know, a couple $100,000 in depreciation. We've got 24 million here. That's 10 times, or whatever, it might be 100, I don't know, do the math. So I think that as a council, we've got to sit down at some point next year before the financial year ends, and we've got to review that process. And to that point, I've actually suggested a change of this motion, because I do commend the work that Alex and her team do. I'm continually impressed with the work that this council does in preparing its financial statements, its long-term plans. It puts everything that we discuss and aspirations and decisions we make into the plans, and the plans are very sound. This has just sort of crept in and crept up, and we haven't dealt with it, and we need to deal with it in the next 6 months. So my suggested motion, which is written up on the screen now, is that Council does endorse the long-term financial plan and infrastructure and asset plan for the period of 25-35 on the undertaking that there will be a review of the town rejuvenation plan in the first half of 2025 to evaluate revised costings of projects currently budgeted for in that year, which I said is 12.6 million. And the review will confirm if Council wishes to continue to progress specific projects and the timing of those projects. And I've put that second part in there because I think at this review we actually do have to determine if we still want these projects. Yes, the projects are all worthwhile, but many of these projects are presented well before the asset life of the full life of the asset. So we're going to rebuild a road or several roads long before it's due. And of course, as we've been told and as we know, if we renew infrastructure or roads or anything before its term, it actually adds extra cost to that cycle, that 10-year plan. So my motion reads like that because I want us to have it'll be a SAP meeting, I imagine, but a review of the town rejuvenation plan. I know there's some revised costs. I know these costs are years old, and some of those projects are not going to go ahead. So I'd like to commend that motion to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Would there be a seconder? Councillor Goodman.
Yes, I'd like to second that motion and thank Councillor Turner for setting that out really clearly in terms of when the expenditure is and the impact on the long-term financial plan. Yes, the long-term financial plan is the 10-year snapshot of where we're heading and what that looks like if we decide to do everything. I do want to reject strongly the notion that the rate rises were done on populist or flippant notions from chats in the street. That's certainly not what I took into account when I was deciding what I thought was appropriate for a rate rise last year. And I think that the discussion that we've just had around the motion here indicates that we have more levers that we can pull rather than just rate increases. I think the second part of the motion is important in that we might choose to remove items from the long-term financial plan, but I think it's important that they remain in the master plan, or consider that they remain in the master plan, because as we've discussed, those projects that are in master plans are not necessarily there for council to do everything, but if they are in master plans and opportunities come up and we can, set that out as why they are worthwhile and meaningful projects, it may help in terms of attracting funding and grant funding. So I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor McGoodman. We have you as a seconder, Councillor Maguire.
I'd just like to make a comment to support Councillor Ross. I was in the chamber with you, Councillor Goodman, when an elected member at the budget time said, let's go 5% because the community will accept 5%, but they won't. It's just a figure. They see a nice round figure, they'll accept it. You were there too.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire, and the budget has been dealt with and moved. And Councillor Ross, you wish to make another statement?
Just in regards to the comment that Councillor Turner said, in regards to the items there with the long-term, in regards to the town centre rejuve, it's going to be discussed at budget time anyhow. So you don't necessarily need a separate motion or you need it included in the motion, because you're going to have the opportunity to talk about it at budget. That's the whole idea of why we do budgets, is that come early in the new year, we're all going to start meeting and we're all going to start discussing about how the budget's going to look. So you don't need to have it as a motion because you're going to be doing it anyhow. And in regards to those figures being put into that next year, it's there to be discussed for next year. What, if you look at it, is the next few years, it's based on the deficits that are in there. So it's about how each of those years are operating. So I don't quite agree with the comments. I understand the sentiment in that we need to look at things, we need to review them. I totally agree with that. We will have it as our opportunity to do it at budget time. We don't need to have it in there as a separate or an attachment to a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. If there's no further commentary, you'd like to conclude, Councillor Turner?
Yeah, just to answer that point, first of all, it feels like a deja vu moment, because a year ago I said the same thing, that we've got all these costs, there are old costs, and we've made a decision not to do Ormerod Street as a one-way street, and we need to have a review. We had a review this year, but they're still in there, those costs from several years ago. So I don't want a deja vu moment. I want the review to actually confirm if we are going ahead and when we're going ahead with these projects, because 21 million in 1 year and 7 million in the rest of the nine years is just out of whack, and it takes all the money we've got in the bank and puts us into debt, and puts us into debt for the cycle of that 10-year project. And these assets aren't necessarily due for renewal in that particular time. So that's why I've moved the motion in this way, and I'm happy to provide these documents or share them, which I will do after the meeting, so people have a full understanding of what I've sort of viewed. And I feel I've got the support of the administration and on this particular project as well. So again, I'm commending that we not just review it at budget time, we actually review it before budget time. So when we get to budget, we can actually review other things in the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. If there's no further discussion, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. Would you like to 12.1? Have we got some? Yep. Nuts and bolts. Okay. Councillor Dennis. Yep. Councillor Dennis. Yes.
I'd just like to commend the work of Mayor Ross and Councillor Turner on this matter, and things are progressing, and watch this space.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. We watch eagerly. Someone like to second that motion? Councillor Ireland. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 12.2. Late item up there. Thank you. This is needed to be in the body of this meeting. So I'll ask if someone would like to move that the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee of the 20th of November are received and noted. Councillor Ross moves. Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. There's another recommendation. Would someone like to move that the Audit and Risk Committee has reviewed the draft financial statement and believe that's a true and fair presentation of the financial year ended 30 June 24? Councillor Turner. Councillor Ross. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. And finally, would someone move that it be received, the Audit and Risk Committee be received as reviewed at the long term, because they've reviewed the long-term financial plan and asset management plan, and they recommend to Council that it is endorsed. Councillor Ross, Councillor Turner. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. So this comes from the Audit and Risk Committee. So would someone like to move, this comes from the Audit and Risk Committee, that the reports relating to the performance of the Naracoorte Livestock Exchange of the 2nd of October are received and noted. To Councillor Ross, Councillor Turner. Any discussion? Councillor Goodman.
Question. Is this separate to the audit that was requested on the Naracoorte Regional Livestock Exchange?
Yes.
Thank you.
All those in favour of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Reports for decision. Mr. Smart.
So a short report on policy reviews of 3 policies, largely more administrative and just tidying up 3 policies without really changing them. So happy to take questions, but the recommendation is there that we endorse those amended policies, reviewed policies.
This is what I'd like to thank Mr. Henschke for his diligence over the bit more than a year in going through policies and bringing them before the council. Some of them have been well overdue, so Adam has now left our place, and so we thank him for his work. Would someone like to move that those policies be endorsed? Councillor Crosling. Seconded, Councillor Downwood. They made great reading, Councillor Downwood.
Absolutely, read them last night as I was going to bed.
Especially the prudential one. Exactly. Thank you.
Help for sleeping.
Is there any discussion around these policies? There being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Next report on elected representation reviews. This is progressing the discussions that we had at our briefing session and presentation by our consultant undertaking the review. I'm not going to go over the report because it really reflects the discussion that we had that evening. So the process from here is subject to recommendation going through, is that a representation report then gets developed after tonight. That gets brought back to council, and then that goes out to public consult. Any feedback we get from that representation report feedback comes back to council. They endorse it or change it or whatever they wish to do. Then it goes off to electoral commission, and any changes or not that are made are then provided to the electoral commission for hopeful endorsement, and any changes to the 26 or 27 election, whenever that may be. So particularly within point 2 there, I've suggested that council in principle accept that elect members' numbers should be retained and the existing no ward structure should be retained, with the given legislative changes that we don't have to make any decision on a mayor, because that is across the state now.
Thank you, Mr. Smart.
Happy to take any questions.
It's as I recall the meeting, the presentation we had that reflects that. Councillor Turner.
I'm happy to move the motion as read.
Councillor Turner. Councillor Crosling. Second. Any further discussion? Being none, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 13.3, road asset service levels and operational review. For 13.3, it's my opinion that this is a large body of work, which I'm sure you would all agree with. And I believe that I'll be looking for a motion that we take this to a briefing session for further discussion and evaluation. And there is more discussion that for Mr Willsmore to have with Wheaton Enterprises that needs to be brought to the table. So I'll be looking for something. Councillor Maguire.
Can I move that this go into a SAP meeting? We can recommend that we move this into a SAP meeting for discussion. Then I'd like to speak to the motion if I can. That's all right. Again, I understand SAP, we can go out of meeting procedure, so we can talk about it openly. But again, transparency, media, video, this is an important document. I was up till midnight reading it. There's a lot in there to discuss, and I just think we need to be as open as we can with it.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. A seconder, Councillor Ross. Councillor Grundy.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I'd like to speak against it, and I'd like you to confirm if this is lost, can we go down the path of recommending that this does go to a workshop or a briefing session, please?
Yes. Councillor Turner.
I'd like to speak against the motion as it's put, because I think the Talus consulting actually is fairly sound, and perhaps the administration needs that sooner rather than later for depreciation and asset valuation and that sort of thing. So I think I'd be quite comfortable in separating the 100-page Wheaton report and approving the Talus. So I'm speaking against that.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. And you know, my first thought was that we should receive the Talus report, but it has been spoken about that these two should be considered together. But I'm happy with that. I have a seconder. Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Being none, would you like to conclude?
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I'd like to speak against it because I think a workshop would be far more beneficial for us to be able to talk about this, especially the Wheaton's report. That would be my preference.
Thank you. In conclusion?
Yes, thank you. Again, why are we not being transparent with the community? Is it because these reports haven't given you your desired result that potentially as elected members that we wanted? Let's not forget, there was a letter in the paper saying it's the worst roads in 30 years. The staff have seen it. These reports actually reflect what a good job our staff are doing. We have made some pretty hefty accusations. Let's go open with the community, have the media here, have it live streamed, and let's talk about it openly. There is no difference. I've got nothing to hide, so I don't know why you guys have.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. There's no further discussion. I'm put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Motion is lost. Mr. Councillor Maguire has called for a division. It is an open meeting, Councillor Maguire, but I'm happy for the division.
Thank you.
All those in favour, please stand. We have councillors lost. We have councillors Maguire, Dennis, Ross and Crosling. And those against the motion are Turner, Grundy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for taking that.
Rayner, Goodman, Ireland and Downward. Yes. Thank you. I still need a councillor. Thank you. Councillor Grundy.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. I'd like to move that these reports are tabled at a workshop or briefing session for a lot more detailed questioning and analysis.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. Second, Councillor Goodman.
I'd like to second that, and the reason that I didn't vote for it go straight to a SAP meeting is because there's 100 pages of the Wheaton report plus Talus. There is a lot to discuss and analyse within that. It's beyond the scope of what we can achieve in a SAP meeting. There will be direction that will come out of this, and that will get discussed extensively at a SAP meeting, I have no doubt, and there'll be every opportunity for those questions to be asked and for the community to hear the directions that have come as a result of these reports.
Thank you, Councillor Goodman. Councillor
I
Crosling.
just wanted to know the reasoning why it would be outside of the scope of a SAP meeting, because as it reads, we can go outside of meeting procedure in a SAP meeting and discuss to our heart's content. I don't think there's any limitations on what we can and can't do in a SAP meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Crosling. We've already voted on the question of the SAP meeting. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Turner.
Mayor Ross, if I'm allowed to, am I able to ask the administration, is it their preference to have these two discussed together, or my original suggestion of separating one that seems to be useful?
Mr. Smart.
I'll be guided by Mr. Smart.
I think, given the relationship between the two, I think it would be healthy to have the discussion on both, because they do interact and relate to each other. So I think it'd be important to have both reports up for discussion. And the effect on depreciation, that flows through anyway, so that won't be restricted or held up by any such discussions.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? I put the motion. The motion is that these reports are tabled at a workshop or briefing session. Moved Councillors Grundy, seconded Councillor Goodman. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you.
I'm going to call for a division if I can again. The community need to see what's going on here, Mayor. I'd like to call for a division.
I agree with you.
Yeah, let's bring it on.
The division. Those who voted for the motion, please stand. Thank you. You may be seated. And we have, you've got those covered. Councillors Maguire, Dennis, Ross and Crosling. Thank you. Mr. Smart, would you like to suggest a date, perhaps, sometime in the future that we could hold a briefing session, bearing in mind we have a SAP meeting coming up in January? I think there's a date decided already.
1st of March would be a good date. Probably.
And Mr. Smart, you couldn't be there because you'd be a public person by then.
Oh, it could be in the audience. Suggesting 10th of December. So that's what we've got earmarked at this stage. Tuesday night.
Mayor Ross, can I just add that I thought they've only got an interim report from Wheaton's at this stage. Wouldn't it be sensible to wait until we've got a full report before we have this workshop and briefing session?
Mr. Smart.
Look, that is their final report. So there are parts missing, appendices missing, which we continue to request, but the actual report is their final report. So there's no amended report coming. We've sought the appendices, which are additional to the report. That report is their report.
Councillor Ireland.
If I can just add, Mayor Ross, I think it would be advantageous to have it early in the new year sometime, or to shift it post-Christmas. I think we've got enough on our agenda at this stage.
If we have a meeting in December on the, which did you say, the 10th, that certainly won't make it for a decision at the December meeting. It'll then go to a SAP. Following a SAP, it's unlikely to make it up for the January meeting. I think that we need to keep the ball rolling. I don't think it's going to have any, in my opinion, but of course I'm in your hands. Councillor Goodman.
I'm very busy right up to the lead up of Christmas, and I certainly wouldn't be able to make the 10th. I'm not sure if there are other people in the same situation, but things are booked up.
Not sure. Councillor.
I think if we are waiting for supplementary information from the Wheaton Enterprise report, there's a good case for waiting to get that so that we've got the whole box and dice.
Thank you, Councillor Grundy. The Chief Executive Officer will notify you in due course of an appropriate date for.
Can I just add one comment?
You may.
So I understand wanting to have the final report. We've asked. So it could be March or April. So if we're not receiving it after asking multiple times, do you want to hold off for how long? Or do you want to continue having it later sometime in January? So I think at some stage, and council can help with some sort of direction during that discussion of the SAP to actually, it comes from elected council, that certain information that's not forthcoming in that report, you can actually move. So it's not just administration asking for it, it could be actual council saying, we want any information. So it makes sense to sometimes get the elected arm behind our request, not just administration. So we are, to be honest, we are sick of asking and getting zero response.
Thank you, Mr. Smart, and I think we're getting to that point. 13.4.
Mayor Ross, I just had a thought around that. I'll share that. I thought the TELUS report actually gave us an indication that we're doing, things more than good enough. So the urgency is not around changing practices in the next 3 months or 6 months. That report's designed to set council up for the next 10 and 20 or 10 years on procedures, whether we do or don't buy graders or whether we do or don't proceed in or do a process a certain way. So I understand the sense of urgency and I'll be guided, but I think it's not a life-threatening that we need to change immediately. It's just an opportunity to review suggested improvements.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. Take that as a statement. Thank you very much. 13.4, Caves Valley Drainage Study Funding. Mr Willsmore.
Thank you. This is just bringing back to the members a report on the previously approved works to undertake a drainage study of the Caves Valley drain system. So we had submitted an application for the Stormwater Management Authority funding through the state government. It's been rather drawn out and rather bureaucratic. So the advice we're getting from the project officer, which I escalated to the general manager of the Stormwater Management Authority, is due to the age of our drainage plan and not being an approved stormwater management plan, they won't do an itemised funding of specific catchment areas. We argued based on that November rain event, we want to target an area that we know has got some concerns. To reassess the whole township would be an extreme waste of money. So the advice was they still haven't taken it to their board for approval. They're strongly suggesting it won't be supported. So they could take it to February if they like, but they wanted to notify us that the precedent's been set that it wouldn't be supported. So if council still want to proceed with this work, we'd have to do it out our fully funded by council money. So I've put a recommendation there if we do want to proceed, so council fund it, and then the CEO is delegated to approve the consultancy agreement to the maximum value of $65,000. Happy to take questions.
Questions of Mr Willsmore? There being none, would someone like to move his recommendation? Councillor Dennis. Councillor Crosnick, seconded. Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. 13.5, Botanical Working Group. Are those pine trees still standing, Mr Willsmore?
These two are, yes. So the Botanic Working Group met and discussed various items. One recommendation was provided to council. So we'd previously removed a couple of pines at Lucendale Cemetery. These two aren't the original two we removed. So since that time of removing, we had some storm damage come through and we had one of the trees assessed by an arborist who had agreed it was at end of life. So there's a bit of discussion between the working group about these trees, but yeah, the following recommendation was made, so we seek your direction.
Thank you, Mr Willsmore. Would someone like to move to that effect? Councillor Turner. Very quick. Councillor Goodman. There being no discussion about the fate of these pine trees, all those in favour?
We did discuss about your statue idea.
Thank you, Councillor Maguire. Carried. I think we're at 13.6. 13.6.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Yes, so this one is hopefully relatively uncomplicated report. So Pam Knight is looking to hold a Christmas market on the 21st of December in the town square. Like any venture that has a commercial slant to it, we do have to put it to council for approval. So she's looking for a number of stall holders. I believe she's out there advertising at the moment. My suggestion or recommendation is that we treat the permit fee a bit like we do our Limestone Coast Farmers Markets that are held in the last 3 months of the financial year, where we do a per head fee rather than a standard permit fee through our fees and charges guide. So looking for the okay from council along with the ability to charge on a per stall fee. Any questions? Thank you.
Councillor Maguire moves. Seconder, please. Councillor Downwood, thank you. No questions? All those in favour? Carried, thank you. 13.7. Mrs Collins.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. This one's very straightforward as per my report, so quite simply I'll just commend it all to you.
Thank you, and I commend Mrs Collins and her team. It's a very professional document. Thank you very much. Would someone like to move that we accept the annual report? Councillor Dennis, Councillor Crosling, all those in favour? Carried, thank you very much. Oops, here we go. Lucindale Community Football Club.
Thank you, Maros. So as per the report, Lucindale Football Club are looking to apply for a community loan for the purchase of a block of land in Lucindale, which currently houses the Bottle Recycling Centre. I hope I've provided enough information within the report regarding our process for community loans. Just a point which you might be familiar with in regards to where the funds are coming from, given the long-term financial plan we've presented and the likes, I would suggest that we look to use our CAD facility with LGFA. That's not considered an investment. It's a bit like a line of credit. So it has a $2 million line of credit. We can partially draw on it. So we could look to draw the $50,000 if council were to approve the loan. I did suggest to councillors that if they wanted to view the football club's financials, they had the ability to do so. I didn't have anybody take me up on that, but I can confirm that they are in a healthy financial position. And as per my report, they really are looking for this facility to keep their investment funds freed for that opportunity to progress their club rooms venture that they've recently held public discussions about.
Mrs Edmund, what's the risk profile, do you believe, of the Lucindale Football Club?
It's a long time. Look, I would say, I used to work for the bank, but that was a long time ago. I would say relatively okay. The only concerning feature or factor about the application, to be honest, was the lack of audited financials. So that involved some time spent with Galpins. I did provide Galpins' letter or independent auditor's report about it. They've come back with some flags of really this shouldn't be used for anything other than just to verify the legislative process or the required process is being carried out. So hopefully that provides enough context.
Given that the land's still there.
Yeah. Yes. That's
Thank you, Mrs Egmonds. Would someone like to move that we approve a community loan to the Lucindale Football Club? Councillor Ross. Seconder, Councillor Goodman. Any further discussion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 14.1. Mr Willsmore.
Thank you.
again, just want to draw members' attention to the Hard Waste Days. So they've been held in both Narracoorte and Lucendale. About 100 more users than last year, so it's hurt our budget, but it shows that the community are still quite supportive of this program that we're running. So it was quite a busy day for our contractors and their staff manager, but was very well supported by the community.
Question two.
Yes, please.
Through the chair, Mayor, to Mr. Wiswell. Mr. Wiswell, I did notice in that report we had on our road review 2014, correct me if I'm wrong, 2019 and 2024 we had the reviews done on the road. 90% of our unsealed roads had come back ticked very good to good, which is an amazing effort. My question is, at a cost of what was it, about $120,000. Congratulations to the staff, sorry. But is that something we need to continue doing for the next 4 years at that sort of costing when our roads are at such a good standard?
It's a question for elected members to be at what service level they want to maintain on their assets.
Thank you, Mr. Willsmore. I have a question, Mr. Willsmore, in regard to the utilisation of drones for spraying, and I know they're used widely for many uses across the southeast and further afield. Do you see there's potential and time-saving utilising drones for activities like this? And cost savings, that's what I'm looking at, yeah.
Not necessarily cost savings, probably some safety improvements. So we've used this for our Cedar Mess lagoons, and we've used it at the sale yards for the lagoons where we can't get a vehicle. We're out there walking and spraying with the hose. So there's certainly some time and safety improvements made by using the drone in certain areas, but certainly not looking at doing that.
It won't go past a man holding a hose.
No, humans are still important.
Any questions of Mr. Willsmore? Other questions? There being none, thank you. 14.2, planning and compliance, Mr. McCroskey.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. As mentioned earlier in the meeting, council staff have met with DIT in regards to the Limestone Coast Regional Plan. We've provided information in regards to growth areas going forward from an administration perspective and the contact we have with the community. They have reiterated that they will be meeting with the elected member body, and hopefully the housing strategy, whichever way and direction it may take, will give you some back-end information and data to allow you to make those decisions when meeting with the department. Further to that is, I believe that we're within the cusp of the last couple of days of having the roof completed, the re-roof at the Lucendale Hall, and by all reports it's taking shape and looking rather good.
I can confirm that. I saw it today. Looking good, thank you. Any further questions of Mr. McCroskey? I think Mrs. Collins.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Ross. Nothing further from me, but happy to take any questions.
Can I just say that Mrs. Collins is very reserved when it comes to what she does and her team in community engagement, and so thank you for the pictures and the information, Mrs. Collins. Are there any questions? Must be on to item 15. Publications, documents for information to other bodies. Questions with item 16. Questions with notice. There being none. Motions with notice, nil. Questions without notice, there aren't any. Motions without notice, there aren't any. And item 20 are matters the CEO recommends to be considered in confidence. And there are some items, so if I could please ask the public and the media to vacate the room. Thank you very much for your attendance. I hope that was enjoyable.